area at the time, um, and ended up accepting the offer from Midwestern. I was lucky. It was 2006 when I started PA school, so I went in the 2005 application cycle, and like word was just getting out about like what a popular profession PA is, and what a great work life balance it is. So it wasn't as competitive as it is now to get into PA programs. They didn't have any like shadowing requirements. You just had to have, I think at the time it was like 500 hours of patient contact. And I had worked as a dental assistant for a couple of years part time. So that fulfilled my requirement for patient contact hours. So I got a seat in the class. I think there were 84 people in my class. And we had a couple people drop out. We had a couple people who decided they did want to go to medical school. So they had like finished their whole first year of PA school and then like, I think I'll switch to med school. So they basically had to start all over again. I'm like, oh, that's crazy. um, so PA school was a challenge. I had never had any big academic challenges, never had trouble studying, remembering information, but PA school was different. The level of detail that you're required to know it's yeah, just be prepared if you plan to go. I think about 2/3 of our class failed our first anatomy exam, and we were all like in shock over it, like, oh my God, I never failed the test before. What do we do? So that's when things kind of got real, and we realized we had to really buckle down and actually study for hours and hours and hours, which I hadn't had to do before. So that was new. Um, I graduated in 2008. I worked in the ER for a couple of years, and I loved it, but the shift work was not for me. So I started thinking about looking for a job in the clinic. And when I was a student and doing my clinical rotations, most of the pharmaceutical reps would bring in all the lunches to the offices. Like, you should think about going into dermatology. Dermatology is the best. Dermatology is great. You get to do tons of procedures. It's an easy clinic job. I was like, all right. And I loved orthopedics. One of my rotations as a student was orthopedics. And so I was like, well, I'll interview there too. But in orthopedics, it's like, oh, you're on call, every third weekend. And if you're on call and there's, an accident or something, you get called in with the trauma surgeon. I had little kids at home. I was like, yeah, I don't think that's going to be for me. So I was lucky to find a job in dermatology. She was willing to train. A lot of dermatology offices are looking for people who have 2 to 3 years of experience. So I got trained for like 3 months at my first dermatology job, and then I was pretty much on my own, which was a little intimidating. I was very happy that I had that experience working in the ER for a couple of years before I did that. So I had a little bit more confidence. And I've been in dermatology. It'll be 15 years this August. So when I did my exit interview from the ER, the director's like, "Oh, you're going to be so bored in dermatology. You'll be back in the ER in 6 months." Uh, and 15 years later, I'm still in dermatology and I still love it. So that's pretty much the quick story about how I got to where I am today.
That was awesome. Thank you. We can go ahead and have like a Q&A session if you want.
Yeah, of
People
course.
usually just put like their questions in the chat, but I can go ahead. I have a question for you. Can you describe
Okay.
what like your everyday like work day is like? Like what do you do on a daily basis, like through clinic and like what procedures and all that?
Yeah, so I get to do everything. I'm a generalist in dermatology, so I do skin surgeries, biopsies, cryotherapy, skin exams for skin cancer screening. I see medical dermatology patients for anything from like warts and acne to serious autoimmune skin rashes. Um, the surgeries are fun. Like I did a couple surgical rotations as a student. I just fell in love with surgery, so I love getting to do those. And then the cosmetic side of it, we do Botox and fillers and lasers and chemical peels and and all that fun stuff. And the plastic surgery side, am not on the plastic surgery side, but I do see some patients in consultation and then send them to plastic surgery if they do need something from them. And that's a whole other world that I haven't really crossed over into, but it's pretty interesting. My daily schedule in clinic is pretty easy. I work 8:30 to 5, and I just changed my schedule this year. I was full time and I've gone to part time, so I work 3.5 days a week now. Um, which, once you start to scale back, it's like, oh, how could I ever go back to working full time ever again now? It's nice to have that extra time off. And I'm very lucky to be in that place.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, it looks like we have a few questions popping in through the chat. Can you see those?
I don't see the, hold on one second. Let me see. I can see the previews. Okay, I've got it open on the side. Sorry.
Okay.
Let's see. So I'm going to just start up at the top. What is your biggest piece of advice for us as undergrads wanting to pursue a career as a PA? So I mentioned just be prepared if you do study, you want your science GPA to be as high as possible. You want to pad your application as much as possible with lots of worthwhile things, volunteer activities, shadowing hours, patient contact hours. So anything that you can do to help boost your application to get a chance for an interview. I I feel like, as a veteran and non-traditional student, I was a little bit older. I had some healthcare experience, so I think that helped me a lot. But it's getting more and more competitive now. So I think the more things that you're able to do, um, it's going to help you. What made you want to work in the ER initially? So my very last rotation as a student was the ER rotation, and I fell in love with it. I only had to work a couple of night shifts on ER as a student, so I didn't get a good feel for like how rigorous the swing shift schedule was going to be. But getting to see everything from, a sprained ankle to a heart attack, and being able to care for those patients was really gratifying. And in the ER, you do get to do quite a few procedures as well. Lots of suturing, splinting, incision and drainage of cysts, foreign body removal. It was a lot of fun stuff, but the schedule just was not for me. So, but I'm so glad that I got that experience, and I encourage every new PA that I talk to go into some kind of primary care specialty for a couple of years just to get all of that experience because it really helps to cement what you learn in PA school. And then if you do go into a subspecialty, you still have all of that great experience and knowledge that sticks with you. I've seen patients in dermatology who come in and they mention like something non-dermatologic, and they're like, well, what do you think I should do about this? And like, this one patient had Guillain-Barré syndrome, which had nothing to do with his dermatology complaint, but he's like complaining of muscle weakness in his arms and legs after he had an upper respiratory infection. I was like, you need to go immediately to the ER. He ended up getting hospitalized. He was in the ICU for 5 days, and he had seen his primary care doc for it. And they're like, oh, well, we don't know. Maybe you're just getting the flu. And I was like, no, this was a healthy 40-year-old man who could barely lift his arms and legs. And so I got him to the ER and got him hospitalized. And he was there for, psoriasis. I was like, oh no, this doesn't have anything to do with your psoriasis. So having that primary care experience was very helpful. Um, Next question. What's your favorite part about being a dermatologist? What has made you stay for so long? What are the downsides of it as well? My favorite part, I think, is forming very long lasting relationships with patients. I've been in Arizona for 15 years almost. Um, and I've seen, my pediatric patients grow up and go through high school and go to college, and a couple of them have gotten married. And I still see their parents as patients. So it's really cool just to form those relationships and see those things happen to your patients over the years. And they keep in touch. I had somebody who had gone off to college and moved to Oregon, and she was back in town visiting her parents, and she had something going on, and they're like, "Oh, go see Amy." And we sat and talked for like 15 extra minutes. I'm like, "I'm so far behind, but I want to talk to you." So that's probably the most gratifying thing of working in a specialty in a clinic. And in the ER, you don't really get that. In a lot of surgical specialties, you don't get that. You'll see a patient once and then they're gone, and then you never see them again. You don't know what happened to them. So I think that relationship part of it is what kind of hooked me to stay. Um, Dermatology is also a very broad, there are over 20,000 different skin diseases. And, you're lucky if you get to see, maybe 10% of that over the course of a career because there are so many rare things. And I love the detective work that kind of comes into play because so many rashes look so similar. And so you have to take a very broad history. I, my, the dermatologist that I work with, he's a skin cancer surgeon. He doesn't like the medical side of it, so he lets me handle all that stuff. And he sees me ordering all these crazy labs and ultrasounds and stuff for people. He's like, "Why are you ordering this?" I'm like, I'm chasing down a diagnosis for this person." So you kind of get to play detective with a lot of these things, and that's pretty fun. And it's very gratifying, like when you find that answer and you think, "Oh, it's this weird zebra disease that nobody's ever heard of before. There's only 5 case reports of it." And then yours gets to be the sixth, and you get to write it up. And no, I've never been published though. So that's disappointing, but it's fun to write them up. Um, so that's why I've been in dermatology for so long. There's just every day you're going to see something completely different. No 2 days are the same, and every once in a while something comes through your door that just is like, "Wow, this is so cool and interesting." Downsides of dermatology, a lot of it is the same repetitive stuff. I probably spend about 60 or 70% of my day just repeating the same things that I've said to thousands of patients for the last 15 years about, what to look for skin cancers when they do their self exams at home, how to treat acne, why warts are considered contagious, all it. So it gets a little bit repetitive. But if you just kind of, flip off the switch that would annoy you about doing that, which I've figured out how to do a long time ago, um, it's still a lot of fun. Um, the other downsides, and I think this is any clinic, you go to see your doctor and you're sitting there waiting for 45 minutes. Like, why am I waiting 45 minutes? My appointment was, coming on an hour now. Um, and people just show up late. They don't get their paperwork done. They forget their insurance card. It's all these like little things, and that puts us behind. 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there, and I'm a little OCD about like staying on time, and if I start to run more than like 15 minutes behind, I start to get a little bit stressed out. And my New Year's resolution this year was just let it go. Don't worry about it. And so far, I've been staying on track, and my life is a lot happier this year than it has been in past years, and worrying about stuff like that. Um, so yeah, and I think that's going to be in any clinic. Downsides of dermatology specifically, I really can't think of any because it's a wonderful profession and I love it. Um, do you think you have a better chance of getting hired on as a dermatology PA if you have PCE hours as an MA in dermatology? Yes, most likely, even if you don't have any um, hands-on treatment experience, you have a lot of base knowledge as a medical assistant in just terminology, treatment options for skin diseases, assisting in procedures. So I think that would probably go a long way to getting your foot in the door for an interview at a dermatology clinic. What were you able to do in the ER, and what was a shift like there? Uh, we had a fast track urgent care. And so about half the time I would work there, and the other half of the time was on the main ER floor where you're seeing, accident victims and overdoses and heart attacks and things like that. The fast track was more cold and flu, sprained ankle, foreign body in the eye, stuff like that. Um, and it was just a very wide variety. They were 12-hour shifts. You'd usually get there about 30 minutes before your shift started, so that you can take a report from the person who was coming off of their shift. We tried our best to get all of the patients that we started finished before we left, so we weren't leaving somebody, holding the bag with, some crazy diagnosis or test results that haven't come in yet. So you're usually there for about an hour after your shift. So a 12-hour shift is really more 13 and a half, sometimes 14 hours. Um, and swing shift was, we had to work at least 10 shifts a month. So you had a lot of days off, but you were working 2 days and then you got a day off. And then you were working two overnights and then you got 2 days off and then you're back on days again. So it was a lot of back and forth, very sleep deprived. I always felt like I was, sleeping for a night shift, sleeping from a night shift. I wasn't getting to spend a whole lot of time with my kids, and after a couple of years, I just knew that was it. Um, but it got crazy. I was in the south suburbs of Chicago, and we had some problems with gangs where I lived. So we would get people dropping gunshot victims off in the ambulance bay and driving away. We had a great security staff, thank God. There were a couple nights where we were taking care of, a gang member and the rival gang would show up. It's like, an episode of some medical drama on TV where they come to finish the job. And, there were police there all the time. Um, I had I had a young patient once little girl who was obviously being abused. So I had to call child services and the police, and we had to try to detain the mother. And she actually like snuck out somehow and left her daughter there alone. And so we had to try to figure out who to call for this poor little girl who was left with a broken arm that, I don't know, never got to the bottom of the story of like how this actually happened to her, because we just were, told, oh, she fell. Like, obviously, it wasn't just a fall. So yeah, it got stressful at times. And you had your frequent flyers who would come in for drunk and disorderly. They just come in to sleep it off and get an IV, or people who were habitual drug users, and the paramedics would have to bring them in and like, oh, he's here again, give them their Narcan, check their vitals, make sure they were okay. And then they finally wake up and they would want to get out of there. And they did not never wanted to talk to anybody about, going into counseling or trying to get into a rehab program to get off of substances. So yeah, it was hard. And a lot of those people, you'd see them once or twice and you never come back and you never find out what happened to them. So yeah, it was stressful. I had a guy once who came in with a headache, um, and he was a weightlifter, and it was obvious he was on steroids. And I asked him, and he denied it. And uh, I think it was his girlfriend who was in the room with him, and he ate some chicken that had been sitting in the refrigerator for like 6 days, and he decided to cook it and eat it, and he gave himself food poisoning, and all of his symptoms fit with food poisoning. And I was like, this doesn't seem right. And I had the ER doc come and check him out too. And he's like, no, it's probably food poisoning. And as he was getting ready to leave with his discharge instructions, I told him, I said, if this headache that you have doesn't go away or it gets worse or you start having like vomiting with this, you need to come back. And he was back within 12 hours, and he ended up having an aneurysm rupture in his brain from steroid use, and they ended up having to like life flight him for brain surgery to coil the aneurysm. And yeah, it's like, and his girlfriend saw me, she's like, I'm glad you told us to come back if it got worse, because I probably would have let him just fall asleep. It's like, oh, God. Yeah, so it was stressful at times. Dermatology, that doesn't really happen. But it was really a great experience. Um, Next question. I'm a mother to a young daughter. What was the biggest challenge of being in the program as a mother? The biggest challenge was probably just missing time with family because you're studying all the time, you're writing papers, and then when you're a student, you're on rotations, which can be an hour or more away from your home. They try to coordinate your student rotations close to where you live, but that's not always a guarantee. So there's a lot of commuting involved for that. I missed a lot of, family parties and husbands, and I had a great support system. My mom and mother-in-law were my babysitters. One of my husband's aunts was coming over to help babysit when I was in school because he worked full time. My kids were, gosh, 10, 6, and 3, 2 when I started PA school. Um, and so it was hard. It was hard not getting to spend as much time with them as I wanted to. But the nice thing about PA school versus medical school is it's only a little over 2 years and then you're done. And my middle son, who's now 28 years old, um, is finishing up dental school. He's at Midwestern in Glendale in Arizona here. And he told me, he's like, watching you go through PA school really kind of inspired me to go on to graduate school and do more and to get into healthcare. And he told me, he's like, if I saw my mom could do this when she was older and had kids, I'm a young guy. I could easily do this. So it was really helpful, I think, for the kids to see mom really put in the hours too. There were the downsides of it and missing time with them, but um, I think that it kind of helped them see what you can accomplish if you really put your mind to it and work hard. Um, oh yeah, the other thing that really stuck out in my mind. Um, I went grocery shopping once. I think it was maybe my second year of PA school. I was on a rotation and we got out early and I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to the grocery store. And I'm walking around the grocery store thinking, when was the last time I was actually in a grocery store? Like my husband like took over and did everything. I don't think I did more than like a few loads of laundry in 2 years. I didn't do any of the grocery shopping. He was like Superman. And I was standing there in the grocery store like, it's probably been more than a year since I've actually been in a grocery store. It was very surreal and strange. So yeah, having that support system set up before you start is very helpful. Get everything in place and then, realize there are going to be days when, the kids are sick and nobody's there to take care of them, or your husband and your kids are sick, which happened once. And, I was like, I had to call in a couple times because there was nobody else to help out. So just be ready to roll with the punches. What are the biggest challenges you face as a PA in your current role? Uh, I've been doing this for a while, so I don't feel right now I have too many challenges. When I first started, obviously you don't have a lot of experience, and so you're having to explain to patients what you do. But when they say, "Oh, how long have you been doing this?" You tell them, "I've been doing this for 17 years." They're like, "Oh, okay." But if they ask and you're like, "I've been here for a year," and they're like, "Oh, well, is the doctor going to see me too?" I haven't had a patient ask me that probably in 5 years or more if they could see the doctor instead of me. Um, that was probably the biggest challenge though early in my career is that you're getting challenged by the patient on your own experience when you've had this great medical education, you've gone through your rotations, and you've got some experience under your belt, and you're still having to constantly fight for credibility. And that was a little bit of annoying in the beginning, but that gets a little bit better over time. And I think PAs are pretty well accepted now as experts in their field. Um, in my current role, I would say I do get frustrated just with the fact that I'm not the business owner. I'm not my own boss. For people who are like looking to want to own their own practice in Arizona, you actually can now. They've changed our PA practice laws, and once you have, um, I think it's 5,000 hours of clinical experience full time, um, you can open your own practice. You can only be a minority owner in a practice, but if you're working with a good collaborating physician, um, and they're actually now like virtual collaborating physicians that you can sign up with, like for a small monthly fee. like, $400 or $500. They sign off on charts if they need to. They review things with you if you need it. So it's a changing world in the PA practice field, and it's kind of nice to see this opening up. So yeah, there have been times where I thought about opening my own shop up, and it's I'm 53 years old now, and I've got maybe 10 more years of work left. So I don't think it would really be worth my time to go down that road at this point. Um, if I'd have done it 10 years ago, I'd probably it would have been worth it. But I have such a great work-life balance now, and owning your own practice is the reason I didn't go to medical school. I really didn't want that responsibility. So um, I just wanted to be able to go to work and come home and live my life, and that's what I get to do. It's very nice. Do you have advice for pre-PA students experiencing burnout? Uh, yes, I think we all get to that point where you're like, I don't want to take another science class. I don't want to take another lab. I don't want to do more shadowing hours. Um, I think a lot of people take a gap year, which is very helpful. I know my older son who's in dental school did that. I told him to just go do some job that has nothing to do with what you think you want to do for a little while. And then he worked at Home Depot for like 6 months. He's like, yeah, I don't want to do that. I do want to go to dental school. I'm like, okay, good. Go get a job as a dental assistant for 6 months and make sure you like it before you apply for dental school. So yeah, just like getting out of the box and doing something completely different, taking some time off can be a big help if you have the opportunity to do it, or just taking a class that has nothing to do with working toward your pre-PA degree. Take a fun art class, take a dance class, take a semester off if you really feel like you need to. But yeah, it's definitely helpful to take a break if you have to. What is the work environment like in a dermatology clinic? It's wonderful. Most of the patients are very friendly. Coworkers are great. I work with wonderful medical assistants who are all very experienced. Um, they're great with phone calls with patients. My last practice, I had to do all of my own phone calls for reporting on pathology from biopsies or surgeries. And I got to this practice now, and they're like, oh, no, you don't have to make phone calls. What? I still do make some calls myself. If I feel like it's a more complicated diagnosis or the discussion is going to be a little bit longer or more than my MAs might be willing to take on. Um, but it's very nice. Dermatology clinics are usually very quiet and peaceful and serene. We try to have like a spa-like environment. This fall, we're going to be opening our new office, which is going to be um, very, very high end and spa like. I'm looking forward to it. Our office that we're in right now, we've kind of outgrown. It's a smaller space and there's not enough room for all of us. So that's one of the reasons I cut my hours back, because we just don't have enough rooms for three or four of us to see patients on the same day. So I might increase my hours in the fall. We'll see. I'm enjoying my 3.5 day work weeks right now, though. But yeah, the dermatology clinic is very nice. Lots of phone calls, though, very, very busy on the phones. So, um, luckily, my office right now is kind of way down the hall, so I don't have to hear the ringing phone all the time. But at my last practice, our workstation was right near the front desk, and it was very loud all the time. Um, let's see. Do you think schools like non-traditional applicants? Yes, I do. I think that they see so many students who have all done, great science work and science degrees and high GPAs. I think that if you meet your science prerequisites, you have a high science GPA, but you have a non-traditional degree, like your degrees in psychology or your degrees in art history, but you've done all of your science prerequisites and you have your healthcare hours. Um, I think that they like having a very good diverse student background population in the classes. Non-traditional applicants, older students, veterans. Yeah, I do. I think that the more non-traditional, because I think I was 33 when I applied to PA school, and I there was one person in the class that was a little bit older than me, and everybody else was, 22, 23 years old. I felt ancient. I laugh now because now I do feel ancient. Like I wish I was 33 again. Um, so yeah, I think that non-traditional applicants, yes, absolutely. And that all gets kind of sussed out through the application process. And when you go into interview, you get a chance to talk about all of your life experience and what would make you a great candidate for a seat in the class. Do you have a dermatology rotation at your PA school? And if so, what did the content look like? So dermatology would be one of the elective rotations, and some schools have that and some schools don't. And it is very hard to get in. That's why I just did a couple of surgical rotations. The pickings get kind of slim toward the end of the program, and the sites that are available to do electives are kind of few and far between. So you really just kind of have to pick what's available. Um, there are dermatology residency programs. I don't know if everybody in the group is aware that there are some residencies available for PAs for almost every specialty. And some of the residencies are 6 months, some of them are 2 years. If they're surgical residencies, they're a little bit longer, but you're actually working alongside medical residents. So you really do get a lot of great hands-on experience in the residency programs. I did not do a residency. I was lucky enough to find a job where they did not require any experience, and I did on the job training. But having a residency would really put your application at the top of the pile if you were looking for a job in dermatology and couldn't get your foot in the door because you don't have dermatology experience. Doing a residency would be pretty beneficial. Um, how would you recommend people to reach out to PAs about shadowing? Most of my inquiries just come from our like info at email address through the website. So I would say, if you know what offices you think you might want to shadow at, just send an email and send your CV along with it, showing what you're studying, showing your volunteer experience. And then I have a couple of other PAs in the Tucson area that I know who also take shadow students for undergrad and for like if you're on a gap year and you finished your undergrad already and you're getting ready to go to PA school, but just looking for more shadowing hours. Um, so yeah, it's not easy to find shadow opportunities. I would say just keep trying, keep sending out messages, and eventually you'll answer. And then once you find somebody, then just tell everybody else where you went so that they know that that's where they can go to shadow as well. I've had, I think, gosh, since I've been here for 5 years at this practice, and I think I've had pre PAs shadowing me. My first year was during COVID and everything was shut down. So since 2021, I've had a shadow like probably 2 or 3 times a year. And I usually do shadowing for about 4 to 6 weeks on Tuesday mornings, just because of the way the office schedule works. Tuesday mornings works out to be the best time to have somebody in the clinic. It's a little bit quieter and I have a little bit more time to actually like sit and talk with somebody in between patients. So yeah, I would say just keep reaching out, send emails, make phone calls. Um, yeah, that's it's hard though. It's hard. A lot of people they don't mind having like a PA student doing a rotation with them, but the shadow, I don't know why people don't like shadowing, having students come to shadow. I love it. I love getting to talk to the pre-PA students, and um, I've met some very interesting, very intelligent people. It's been a very cool experience having people come into shadow. Um, I've done PA rotations when I was in the ER, and at my first dermatology job, we had PA students doing their rotations with us, and that was also pretty fun. And I've also done some uh, nurse practitioner student rotations too. Um, that was very interesting just to learn like how different their education process is to get their NP versus a PA. Do PAs work in labor and delivery or postpartum at all? Yes, absolutely. You'll do a rotation in OBGYN. Um, and I have some PA friends from my class who work in OB or who just work in GYN. And they deliver babies, they do everything. So, yeah, absolutely. Do most dermatology clinics only hire medical assistants that are licensed? It depends on the office. Our office requires a certification, and some offices don't. So if you're looking for an MA job in dermatology, I would say just call the office and ask. And some will, and some won't require the certification. Um, what are the chances someone somewhere would train you on the job in Arizona? I don't know for sure. I've had the first practice here in Arizona that I worked in. We had a couple of MAs who were not certified, but they decided to get their certification shortly after getting hired just because all the other MAs were certified. So I can't speak to that. Sorry. Did rotations help you figure out what you wanted to initially specialize in, or did you know you wanted to do ER previous to rotations? The rotations did help because when I started my rotations, I really was not sure what I wanted to do. So you get to spend, 6 to 8 weeks, depending on your program, in family medicine, pediatrics, psychiatry, OBGYN, ER, general surgery, a couple of other ones I can't remember off the top of my head right now. So you do get a really broad look at all of the different specialties and primary care. And the general surgery rotation that I did, he was also a vascular surgeon. So I got to see a lot of cool vascular surgeries. And then if you get elective options, you can sometimes pick and choose which electives you want to go into if you think you might have an interest in something. Um, so no, I didn't know when I started what I wanted to do. But my very last rotation before my electives was ER, and I really did love that one. So that's why I decided to do that for a couple of years, and it really worked out well for me. I loved it, but like I said, the schedule was just horrible. Do you have any tips on getting hired at a dermatology office as a medical assistant? Um, I will tell you. So I've helped to train a lot of medical assistants. Dermatology is a very tough um, MA job because of how much is involved in dermatology, how many procedures there are, and how broad the depth of knowledge is for dermatology, and how many patients we see a day. I see on average about 30 to 32 patients a day, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less. And in family practice, you might see 15 to 20 patients a day. So it's a very fast pace, and there's a lot of attention to detail required in dermatology. That frustrates a lot of new MAs. I've had many MAs come and go. They'll like get their training done, and then they're there for 90 days and they're like, yeah, I can't do this. This is too much. It's too much detail. It's too many patients. And they're looking for something slower paced. Um, Having prior experience as a dermatology MA is probably the number one thing that will help get you hired at a dermatology office as an MA, or having experience in surgery, in a surgical specialty. That's also pretty helpful, just knowing how to handle pathology reports and remove sutures and assist in procedures. Um, yeah, so any experience like that or in primary care, if you're seeing a lot of patients a day and you're used to that fast pace, that's pretty helpful. I hope that answered the question. Did you do a dermatology clinical rotation in PA school? No, I did not. I did all of the required rotations. And then I did a cardiothoracic surgery rotation and an orthopedic surgery rotation. Cardiothoracic surgery was very interesting and exciting, and the surgeries were so cool. Um, yeah. Um, but my preceptor for that rotation, she knew. She was like, I know that a lot of times you just have to pick a rotation because you have to pick an elective, and this might be the only one that was available. And if you want to go into cardiothoracic surgery, I will teach you everything I know. If you're here because you had to pick one and you have to do an elective and this is the one that you picked, then just ask questions along the way and don't get in my way. I'm like, okay, it's the second one. I know I don't want to go into cardiothoracic surgery. I'll stay out of your way. But got to see, heart transplants and valve transplants and heart lung transplants. And I like, it was really very, very cool. Um, so yeah, if you're able to get involved in at least for one rotation, getting to see things like that, it's very interesting and it's great experience. Would you ever open your own practice? Yeah, 10 years ago, I would have. At this point in my career, I don't think it would be worth my while because it takes about anywhere from 4 to 5 years for your practice to become productive and profitable. And I only have probably about 10, maybe 12 years of practice left. So I'm pretty comfortable where I am, and I'll probably just keep doing what I'm doing. But yes, if that's something you want to do, you absolutely can do it. I would say get several, a good 5 to 7 years of experience under your belt before you try to open up your own shop. Because you don't want to go in and not have enough experience and fall flat. It would not be a good experience because you would end up losing a lot of money. Can you talk about PA school and what to expect, as well as some advice to be successful? So you're there all day, every day. We usually finished up by 4 o'clock. We would start at 8 o'clock in the morning during the didactic year. Classes at Midwestern were 50 minutes. We had some classes that had labs, like we had suturing lab, we had osteopathic lab because it's a DO school, not an MD program. Um, It is a lot of information. I had one person say to me, it's like trying to drink from a fire hose. Yeah. We get about 80% of the information that the med students get to digest over 4 years, and we get it in 27 months in the program that I was in. So it was a lot. So just be prepared for many hours of studying and rote memorization. Um, we did a lot of study groups, which was pretty helpful, um, especially with like biochemistry and pharmacology. Just learning the sheer number of drugs that are on the market, and all of their side effects and all of the dosing and all of the forms of administration. It's a lot. I would sit down after every pharmacology class and like add all those drugs to my big long spreadsheet, and then just sit there in class with my spreadsheet, like memorizing all of these things. And I had things color coded, and so it helps. However, you learn best, make sure you implement those practices as soon as you start taking classes at PA school. Um, that helps a lot. Um, yeah, just be prepared to study like you've never studied before, and try to sleep when you can. Is primary care pediatrics an option for PA? Yes, absolutely. I have several of my PA colleagues that I was in school with who went into pediatrics, and it's a great field. My rotation in pediatrics was very interesting and very busy. Um, it was on the south side of Chicago, and we saw just a lot of very sick kids who lived in poverty, and it was very nice to be able to step in and help out the parents and help out the kids. And the poor doc who ran the practice, he was just so overworked, and he needed somebody. He needed to have a PA or another doctor there with him because he just saw so many patients. So yeah, it's a very great field, very rewarding. If you if you're ready to deal with the parents. Dealing with the kids is easy. Dealing with the parents, always not so much. Yeah. Um, do you think schools accept PCE that occurred overseas? I don't know. I would say if you want to know the answer to that question for sure and you know where you might want to go to school, call that school and find out. Um, talk to somebody in the PA department and say, look, I have patient care experience, but I was living out of state, out of the country. And this is where I worked and this is what I did. And is that going to qualify as PCE for my application? So yeah, definitely call the schools that you're thinking of applying to. They should be able to answer that for you. If you could choose any other specialty besides dermatology and ER, which one would you choose and why? Haha, good question. Um, so I really loved orthopedic. I loved the rotation. I loved seeing the ortho cases when I worked in the ER. So if I ever did have to change specialties again, I probably would go into ortho. My kids are all grown and out of the house now, so I don't have to worry about that. And changing fields in PA is not as hard. I would probably take a pretty sizable pay cut if I did change fields because I have no experience in orthopedics. So I'd probably be starting at, you know, new graduate salary level. um, but yeah, that's probably what I would go into if I had to pick either that or psychiatry. My psychiatry rotation was really great, and that's a very rewarding field, I think.
Okay, if anyone has any other questions, just pop them in the chat real quick. Is there anything you would like to add, Amy, that or anything else you want to say?
No, just wish everybody the best of luck. Study hard. Remember to take breaks and have fun. It's important.
Okay, yeah, well, if there's no other questions, thank you so much. This was so beneficial, and I think it was so
Oh
helpful
yeah,
for everyone.
yeah. You're very welcome. Oh, you're also welcome. Good luck to you.
All right.
I am not on LinkedIn. If you do want to get a hold of me, you can get in touch with me through my work email. You can just send me an email at the info at dermplasticsaz.com. I'll set it in the messages here.
Okay, yeah, I can send out that information to our club email too.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
And then our office manager, Anita, will get the email, and then she can send the information on to me. So,
Okay, that's
and
great.
I am on Insta, but I rarely log on, but I'm on Insta at Amy Derm PA.
Okay, I can add that too. Okay. Thank you so much. You have a great rest of your night.
Oh, thanks. You too.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.